it's Jennifer McClellan. I just filed my paperwork to get on the ballot for governor in the Democratic primary on June 8th. It's International Women's History Day, and we're ready to make history. So join Team McClellan. Go to jennifermcclellan.com to get on board.
Welcome back to another special episode of the Randy Wilson Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilson. This is a special episode. For those of you who are typically familiar with my show, most shows have numbers. We're not even putting a number on this one. This is a very special episode with Senator McClellan, who is a candidate for governor of Virginia, and we are extremely excited to have her. Thank you, Senator, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Randy.
Thank you. For those of you who are tuning into the show, this is Virginia's #1 podcast for hip hop culture and dialogue. And I have taken a survey across Virginia within the hip hop culture and community to find out questions that the demographic I serve is really interested in from you. And so we're going to start this morning with those questions. However, I do want to encourage everybody to please hit the subscribe button, hit a notification bell so that you can be familiar with episodes when they drop on the Randy Wilson podcast. This podcast is aired everywhere podcasts are except SoundCloud. And you can learn more about Randy Wilson at randywilsonpodcast.com. All right, Senator, we have about 6 questions this morning that the constituents across Virginia was really interested in getting feedback from you on. The first one is under unemployment. The Virginia unemployment rate is double that of January 2020. What would you do to boost employment opportunities throughout the Commonwealth, particularly in rural parts of Virginia?
So thanks, Randy, for having me and for that question. And I announced over the weekend my economic plan, how I will build an economic recovery in Virginia that leaves no part of Virginia behind. So you can see the details of that at jennifermcclellan.com. But broadly, recognizing that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. There's some industries that are on the brink of collapse, brick and mortar retail, restaurants, the childcare industry. We've got to stabilize those, focusing on small businesses to help them stabilize and grow. There are other businesses that have continued to thrive. Clean energy is one, technology is one. And so making sure we are continuing policies to help them grow, but making sure that as they are recruiting workers, they are focusing on historically underrepresented and challenged communities. So whether that's Southwest or South Side, where manufacturing has left, or in our minority communities, lower income communities, where we have a lot of people who are returning citizens from incarceration, that they are prioritizing those areas. And I will make it a priority to prioritize those areas and those workers for any economic development opportunities that we have. But the broader plan, you can see on my website.
Well, thank you for sharing that information, Senator. As you may be familiar, I have a pretty extensive background working in mental health in the mental health community across Virginia. And I see significant needs with our population as well in regard to where this is a factor. I also recently was appointed as the executive director of Home Again, which is a 41-year-old homeless organization here in the city of Richmond. And we are spending lots of times right now in trying to get folks re-entered back into society and to getting jobs that can help them with affordable housing. And so I see the need for that to be significant, whether we're looking at rural parts of Virginia or metropolitan areas. But I believe when I put this question out, that it really I noticed that I got this question more from the Southwest parts of Virginia. And so I appreciate you answering that question. Switching over to education. Several weeks ago, as part of your platform, you proposed a huge increase in education funding. How will that increase be funded? And would there be accountability measures in place to ensure that the funding is being placed where needed the most, in particularly the classroom?
The short answer to the second part is yes, but our budgets fund our priorities. And I have seen over time that we have chronically underfunded our K-12 needs and our early childhood needs. Short term, this plan fully funds the Board of Education's recommended standards of quality, which are specifically targeted investments in support personnel like nurses, teachers, social workers, mental health professionals, to help provide some of the wraparound services our students need, which they can't learn without. Some of it will be specifically targeted to school construction and modernization, because our kids can't learn if they're in outdated labs or they have, no air conditioning or roofs that are falling apart. Some of it is specifically targeted to teacher and educator workforce raises. So the accountability will be built into, it's not just like, here's a pot of money for you to spend how you want. It's specifically funding our K-12 needs. And it is my top priority to fund that, because it'll pay for itself in some of the down the road things we may not need to pay for. So for example, the equity gap doesn't start in kindergarten. It starts at birth. By investing in early childhood education, you are spending less time and money getting kids that are not kindergarten ready once they're in kindergarten. It's just one example. And again, you can see the full details of the plan on the website. The last thing I'll say is the General Assembly this year put in our budget a study of our complete tax structure to figure out how do we make it more progressive and how do we make it make more sense. Because right now, K-12 is primarily funded by local governments through property taxes. That bakes inequity into the system. So that report will come out in November before I'm governor, and I will very closely look at it, and whatever recommendations make sense to reform our tax structure in a way that gets inequity out of it, then I will be looking to implement that.
Okay, this is kind of a very current question here in regard to what we're facing right now with education. It's kind of a two-parter. What would you do to rein in the ever-increasing cost of college education? And I want to add to that, just any views that you may have at the current moment with how difficult it is, and I still can say us, because I'm still in that category, for paying back these student loans.
Yeah, it is part of the problem of why college has gotten so unaffordable, is that the state and federal government have not invested in it the way we used to, including in financial aid, and that needs to be a priority. We also need to recognize that not every student and every job needs a four-year degree. And where there are jobs and credentials that you can get through the community college system, and there are a lot of very well-paying jobs that are desperate for trained workers. We just passed the G3 program that will provide free community college for students who commit and actually work in some of those high need areas, which includes childcare, for example. And then we need to make sure we are investing as a state in our higher ed needs so that they don't have to raise tuition and fees. As for student loans, I really hope, but I can't rely on the federal government putting in some sort of debt relief. I think at this point, with all of the bills that are piling up, some of the stimulus money that we are getting, we should use to just pay down debt, whether it's student loan debt, whether it's utility bill debt, whether it's, back rent or back mortgage, to just reset as we are building this recovery. I'm advocating for that and will advocate for that with our federal partners. But in the meantime, we need to look at some targeted relief that we can provide at the state level.
Are you saying that on behalf of the constituents' decision, or are you saying that the government should make a choice in reallocating funds toward student debt?
I think it has to be a collaborative decision. I mean, any government decision really should center the people at the center of the problem in the solution. And so I think that needs to be a conversation, a decision we make together.
Well, okay, that's a great segue to my take on transparency. You used the word collaboration. Do you believe in an open government and that the citizens of the Commonwealth deserve the right to know what's going on inside the government, to what degree of their involvement outside of their vote. I mean, I'm a big believer that you need to earn my vote. I'm not giving it away. And I'm also, I speak that particularly as it pertains to, I think for so many years, respectfully, Black people have given their vote away. That's my opinion. And I'm not speaking for all, but I do think there is a significant percentage that has done that because they have tended to believe that there's one party that typically will favor their needs more than another. And so I think we have been able to see through government, and particularly Virginia government in recent years, lots of transparency, whether it was intentional or not. And so what's your position on an open government? Go ahead.
I absolutely believe in an open and transparent government. You know, we were taught since we were kids that this is a government by, of, and for the people. That means that government's policies and services are only going to be as good as the people who participate. That means we need to allow people to participate and remove barriers to participation. But that you're right, that's not just letting people vote. That is making it easier for people to see what we're doing, whether it's expanding virtual access so people can come to a committee meeting without having to leave work and drive to Richmond, whether it's setting times for committees where people can give public comment, whether it's having more online public comment. And you're right, we have done a better job, especially with this virtual session. We've had more people participate at the General Assembly than ever before. And we need to keep that part of it going forward and allowing people to virtually testify or provide written comments and continue to broadcast and live stream our meetings. For a long time, subcommittee meetings were not live streamed, and that's where most of the decisions were made. We changed those rules. So those are just a few examples, but we've got a long way to go, especially on the regulatory side. Most people understand that decisions are made at the legislature. They don't understand what decisions are made and how they're made at state agencies or local agencies or zoning boards and planning commissions. They don't know where to find agendas. They don't know how to participate in that, or they're not given an opportunity. And so we've got to expand participation there. And I've carried bills to do that in a number of areas. So yes, 100%, we need an open and transparent government because we work for you.
Yeah, I like that. You're right. You do. And I think that's what voters need to recognize, that you need to make sure that your lawmakers are, speaking on behalf of what your needs are. And, the one thing that I've learned since being married, and because I used to have a different perspective toward voting than I do now, but the decisions that we make in our household, they really can't, I don't believe anymore that they can be divided, because we manage multiple businesses, but we manage one household. And so that's one thing that my wife and I have definitely had a lot of conversation about. And we live in an interesting space where on one side of us, we have chair or former chair of the Democratic Party of a certain county. And on the right side, we have representatives from another party. So I used to just tell people all the time, I'm pro-business. If it makes intelligent sense and it makes financial sense, I'm typically a supporter of it. But where I've changed a little bit is that previous elections have really showed me that sometimes voting for a great person who has great agendas and has great things that they want to do can be a good thing, but you really have to recognize the majority on how that party lines up with that supporter. And I think that's something that Virginia has continued to see year in, year out. But I do believe that we are moving in the right direction. I would be remiss to say, as I got a couple more questions here, but I would be remiss to say that I was invested in wanting to have this conversation, because I do believe that you're a great candidate for governor. And so, yeah, I share that. I'm looking to obviously talk to all people, because I believe in respecting all perspectives. But I definitely have to say that I do believe that if you are listening to this show, you should take advantage of the opportunity of going and checking out Senator McClellan's platform, looking at her policies, looking at what she has done in the previous session, and supporting her. I have two more. Well, one more thing though. You said because of when you use the word virtual, just going back to education, one more question.
Yeah.
I would love to see that virtual education be incorporated in permanently as an option. What do you think about that? Do you think there's any chances of that happening in the public school sector?
I think that technology and some virtual component will probably be with us for going forward. Having said that, I also know, and I see with my own kids, I have a kindergartner and a fifth grader in Richmond Public Schools. There is no substitute for some things for that in-person interaction. And so I have always been very hesitant to have a 100% virtual learning environment. But I know that for some students, that's probably better for them. And as long as there is some kind of in-person component, because, my son's teacher, fifth grade teacher, said it is when she's in the classroom teaching a math problem, she can see on the kids' faces when they don't get it. That is a lot harder. And then she can slow down. And the kids are more comfortable kind of raising their hands and saying, I don't get it. They're not doing that the same way on the virtual. So we got to find that right balance.
Yeah, I agree. I see it with my own son as well. It's really difficult to be a good employee or employer and be a good virtual supporter to your child in school right now. But boy, haven't we grown in the past year through these experiences.
Yes, we have.
Given me an opportunity to see things in a whole different light, and much respect to the teachers right now and what they're doing. I definitely appreciate them.
Yeah.
I have two more questions before I end it up with a couple of fun things we do. Gun violence. In the last two General Assembly sessions, numerous gun-related measures to protect against gun violence were passed. Would you support increased penalties for those convicted of gun crimes, in particular those who have multiple gun-related convictions?
This is a tough one because I do not believe in mandatory minimum sentences, because I think we need to let judges and juries look at the circumstances of a crime. But so I do support increased penalties so long as they're not mandatory. And we do still leave some discretion for judges and juries to look at what happened in this particular case. That's a tough balance, I know. But that's usually how I approach this. Is mandatory minimums have just not proven effective and sometimes lead to injustice. So we've got to find that balance between addressing gun violence and not creating more injustice inadvertently.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another question from rural parts of Virginia, and I think this one touches well with them. What would be your approach to increasing high-speed internet in rural areas of the Commonwealth?
So the details of my plan are in my economic plan on my website at jennifermcclellan.com. But broadly, the parts of Virginia that are not connected are the most expensive to connect. So we've got to invest in the infrastructure and work with our local governments to meet the specific needs of their area. That means helping them find the right technology, depending on their density and geography. That means if they need a public-private partnership, if they need to do it themselves, or if they need to do it through an authority, we give them that flexibility. But first, we've got to do a better job of identifying areas that are unserved and underserved. And we've taken steps to do that in the General Assembly through a mapping program that by the time I'm governor should be complete. And then we target our investments in the unserved areas first, then the underserved areas. But we also have to address affordability. And again, I've got details on all of that in my plan at jennifermcclellan.com.
Got you. Well, Senator McClellan, it's been a pleasure to have you. Very thankful to have you on as a guest of our show.
Thanks,
as we close, we like to do something where it's like the audience gets familiar with you in somewhat of a personal level without asking too deep of questions. It's just,
Okay.
I think that everyone knows people want to know the policy, but I think people want to sometimes try to get an idea of who the person is.
Yeah.
So I promise I'm not going to ask you anything extreme here. I think that what I've observed from you throughout your career is that you've always appeared to me to present very personable to people. And I think that people, I definitely know I have a lot of friends that are acquaintances or friends of yours. And so I remember years ago that you was also very supportive of an organization that I support with the Urban League. And so those are things that kind of just stand out to me. And, you have your pearls on. I think that is, I think that identifies with a lot of folks. And I think people find you likable. Okay. But I'm going to ask these questions for those people who, may wonder, like, I wonder what Senator McClellan is listening to on the radio right now. Again, remember, this is a culture and society podcast. So we want to know when you are driving in the car. Okay. And this is how we're going to end. We have 5 minutes.
Oh boy.
3 of those. When you are driving in the car, what is your go-to, genre of music, or who are you listening to that really piques your interest?
I'm very eclectic. So it could be anything. It really could be anything from hip hop to show tunes to classical music. Sometimes I just randomly set my iTunes to whatever. So, but I'm very eclectic. I love music of all kinds.
Gotcha. Okay. We have been going through this pandemic. I mean, I know a lot of people that went from eating bacon and pork chops and hog jaws and chitlins to to becoming vegan and vegetarian and trying to live their best life. And kudos to all those folks. Have you made any life-changing diet change because of what the world has went through?
Diet changes? No.
No?
Other than my husband is cooking a lot more because that's like, I don't know, that's his therapy. That's his stress therapy. So I'm probably eating more than I should because he makes big portions.
I asked that question because I'm telling you, I ask that question almost every interview. You'd be surprised how many people just decided to go vegan. And I mean, it's popular now. It's trendy.
I know. I did start taking medicine for cholesterol. So
yeah. My rheumatoid started acting up as well throughout this transition process. Okay. Last fun question, right? Young Jennifer McClellan. I'm talking about you're still young. Don't get me wrong. But the younger one, right? When you were a child, I'm talking about between the ages of 15 and 21, right? Who was your celebrity childhood crush? Celebrity. I ain't talking about the guy in high school. Celebrity, the person who when you watched that movie or you was listening to that song, they was like, I love them.
Denzel.
God, he's such a staple. He's such a staple.
He's pretty hot.
We need Denzel to come endorse you here in Virginia.
Yes, we do.
We're gonna tag that, okay? All right, Senator McClellan, thank you. I do not want to hold you any longer. I definitely appreciate you being on the show today. And I will say this, please stay tuned in monitoring and listening for some work and involvement that I have right now in the city as it pertains to affordable housing.
Good.
Particularly in your district, actually, okay? I am a part of a big project that I'm hopeful that will really contribute to helping a lot of people get housed. And so maybe we can talk more about that offline, but definitely stay tuned and pay attention for the Kia Hope event that's coming with Home Again here very soon. We're really excited about that. And it, if there's opportunities for you to be involved with it or, just, be a fly on the wall, it's a virtual event. So we would definitely love to get an invitation your way so that you could be a part of that.
Please do. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, guys, this was the Randy Wilson podcast. It's a special episode, no number attached. We will be seeing you soon with another special guest coming up. Remember, you can subscribe everywhere podcasts are, and you can check me out more at randywilsonpodcast.com. Thank you and good night.
Bye-bye.